Thank you. I'm Anuja from Sri Lanka. First of all, I know that we all should congratulate all the presenters for such very informative presentations. At the same time, I would like to draw attention not only to the presenters, but we as a whole group could turn back and see how much have we done. I know that these are not the sort of landmarks, these are the track records of Energia. Being a member of Energia, I'm very proud of that, and we all had the capacity to raise our hands and voices. Now, when I was listening, when I was working back in Sri Lanka and listening to all these presentations, we have done marvelous amount of work changing the lives of women. Right? We have reduced the tragedies, saved their time, and improved their access to information and other networks or whatever it is. Now my major comment is, isn't it time for us to look back and see the impact or implication of these planned development interventions on the social, economic and environmental systems that we are talking about? Because these impacts, though directly, quickly on the surface, we were planning to change the lives of women who are deprived or marginalized or whatever the word that we use in the development jargon. My main argument here is it is time for us to look back and see, place these things in a very broader horizon and see what we have done to change the gender relations and also change the social, economic and environmental systems or the context that Soma has mentioned right at the beginning. Soma mentioned several things from Sri Lanka, therefore I would like to draw attention. I think those are very good, very valuable examples. Soma, pico hydro, micro hydro and dendro energy programs and projects in Sri Lanka. Those are projects and programs, but those must be, or our intervention should be capable of changing the minds of the policymakers if you want to make a change, right? Now, knowledge-based systems. Now, Pico Hydro has been started in one district, Soma, and Micro Hydro and Dendro Energy. Lot of things. Based on those experiences, that decentralized policymakers have realized, unless they are organized women as the knowledge contributors and the capital investors, they would not be able to do anything further in terms of developing renewable energy. Now, what is that basic validity of that basic argument is that we have to push things from the grassroots rather than limiting ourselves, talking about the contribution of our intervention to changing the lives of women. Right? We have to make these things very sharp. Sharp enough to sensitize the policymakers to recognize women as the key stakeholders involving in local programs and projects. Thank you very much. This is my comment. I think we could take these things up in our evaluation. But the reason for me to tell this thing is that we should not wait until we evaluate these projects until last minute. We should establish these things right at the beginning and build on these things and talk about it right from the beginning. Thank you very much. Congratulate you again for your contribution.
Well, I just agree with you. I mean, of course, the impact that one does want to make finally is on the lives of people. But it's very clear that unless you do make a difference to the policies, that's the only way to upscale. And yeah, so I mean, I think that is a very elemental part of the overall strategy to influence policymakers and see that these do get taken up as at various levels as large programs. And so we don't talk of one province in Sri Lanka and so on, but at least nationwide programs. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Medad Muganzi from the Rural Electrification Agency in Uganda. I just wanted to build on the presentation from Botswana. And I was talking about the gender mainstreaming in rural electrification. But probably I would want to hear much more on the issue of there's always a dilemma in access targets and the resources which are available, for instance, for rural electrification projects, and then the issue of gender mainstreaming. For instance, one would want to know that if you probably are implementing rural electrification access, is there a difference in terms of the cost where you're integrating gender activities and maybe where you're implementing energy projects? Because the dilemma in Africa, for instance, is that the rural electrification target, the access for most countries, except a few, is still a challenge. If you talk about East Africa, for instance, the situation in Kenya, the situation in Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, is the same. All this in terms of rural access, they're talking about less than 10%. Okay. Now you realize that the resources probably that you run on, put your hands on, you're trying to increase access, and so whenever you say integrate also even these activities and that, the effect that the cost of each project goes high. So how is this being addressed, for instance, in your experience? In a situation where probably you don't have more resources, but then you have targets to increase, access. We would want to see whether probably integrating gender activities are increasing the costs on average for each project, and how you're overcoming this. Thank you.
Yes. Maybe the first aspect to mention is on the funding aspect for electrification. The country has been very forefront, or rather I would say the government has been putting electricity as one of the top agendas. So what has happened is, like I mentioned earlier on, the gap between the electrified villages and the non-electrified is quite a few. Just the difference of 100 villages not electrified, or rather remaining to be electrified, which in other countries, these villages will be termed settlements, where you have around 500 people in a village. So basically the government has done quite a lot, because the villages that have been electrified, they've been electrified through other countries' funding, like CEDA, Sweden, and CEDA, Canada. And then we've also had government development budget, and in which the policy was to electrify 14 villages per annum. But since there's been a lot of demand from the communities, government was forced to get a loan and electrify 72 villages from 1990 to 2001, and then later on from 2007 to 2010 to electrify more additional 100 villages. So in this aspect, government has done a lot in electrifying villages. That is why the access rate has shot up so high to be more than 50%. And the other aspect is within government. Government last year established a national electricity fund in which every electricity user is requested to pay a levy of 5 tebe per kilowatt, which is almost a cent per kilowatt consumed. And this levy, government intends to use it to increase connections, electrifying villages, and assisting households to connect by reducing what we call national electricity standard cost. Initially, each village would have a standard cost of about 7,000 to 17,000 pula, which is around $1,000 to $6,000 connection fee. But it has since been reduced and to around 1,000. And this is nationwide. Every village is connecting at the same amount, regardless of how far you are from the grid, from the main supply grid. So this is one of the initiatives that government has developed or introduced to make electricity equally accessible to everybody in the country. And the repayment terms were also introduced, that it's not everybody who can afford to pay $1,000 once off. So you can pay deposit and then pay installments of up to 18 months. So that's one of the initiatives that government was pushing. As BPC, we were not too keen about it, but government was pushing, and in that way they subsidized BPC to start and implement the exercise. So these are the initiatives that government has pushed forward, and in which access rate has increased tremendously from 35% in 99 to around 56 in 2011.
Let me just add a little bit to about the cost of gender mainstreaming itself in a program like this or any other program. Once you integrate it within the program cycle, that is, your gender indicators, for example, get into the planning process at the project baseline itself. You have a pre-project launch survey, which the project has anyways, and you integrate gender points within that, then there's actually very little incremental cost involved. And so there is little incremental cost, and but the impacts that you see are likely to be sort of multiplier impacts. I mean, the cost that really has to be incurred is in terms of ensuring a gender focal point, someone who ensures that these issues get taken care of, training of staff, and that sort of thing. So our experience so far is that it's not a huge amount of cost, because you're not really changing infrastructure, you're not adding any new infrastructure and so on. You're just tweaking your program a little bit, not a little bit, quite a bit, but you're tweaking your program within the existing framework. Yeah. Okay, at the back, please. Yes, please.
Thank you.
I
just want to add a lot of that. When we are compiling the impact assessment or monitoring and evaluation, we should not overlook the economic aspect of these projects. I think it will be better to convince a donor or a policymaker if you're able to say this woman started with one cedi. This is the I'm using cedi, the dollar. This is the capital that this woman used to work with. He used to buy so much fuel wood, and with the introduction of the technology, this is how much he spent. So therefore, this is what we've saved within a day or so, and then build this up. I think by so doing, we are able to convince people to actually buy into what we are doing. That's what I found missing in the presentation. Otherwise, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Natalia and I'm from RUCN. I just had a short comment regarding the gender mainstreaming costs. Also to build up on what Soma said, it's an initial cost really, but we try to emphasize that the gender mainstreaming is yielding such a huge returns in terms of effectiveness of projects that it's really worth it to invest in it from the start, so that it's comprehensively sort of included throughout the project, and then the project is ended up being more effective and actually reaching more users, and has huge cost saving and also effectiveness at the end. And I had a question for Botswana. Just is the Power Corporation a private entity, or is it part of the government? Just for clarification.
Part of government.
It is part of government. So when you're referring to the government policy, it's the Ministry of Energy then? Or, okay, so it's part of the so it's part of the Ministry of, can you just explain that?
BPC is a parastatal. It means it's fully owned by government, though it has government provides it fully. It can do separate projects, and government can also influence certain projects that it does.
So the Ministry of Energy is really determining the energy policy?
Yes, the CEO reports to the minister.
In fact, like Masego said, the starting point was the Ministry of Energy, which carried out a gender audit, and they needed to implement in the programs, and that's how BPC as a parastatal sort of got involved. Yeah, please. Sheila can wait.
Hi, my name is Sarah Alexander, and I'm from Selco. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had a question. I think when we were talking in the different presentations, we talk of financial empowerment, we talk of economic empowerment for women. And something that always strikes me is that because you are economically empowered does not necessarily mean that you will have equal access in a lot of decisions. And I think that there are a lot of studies and reports from personal experience. You may be a decision maker in an organization, or you may be, you may have, the economic means to be financially independent, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have an equal say in a lot of things. And I think that is a means of social empowerment. And I was wondering whether a combination of which of these three things will help overcome that, because I see that as probably a very significant aspect in linking gender and energy together. So is it legislation that will help this? Is it certain types of activities? Or do you think that over time, once you financially empower women, it will just happen by itself in a society? So, is there any one thing that works, or is it a combination? And has any organization specifically looked at social empowerment as one of the ways?
Indira, can I request you to respond to this in the context of BSP, where there has been a social empowerment of women? What are the enabling factors?
That's difficult, because these issues come up in different ways in different areas. But I would rather say it's the social acceptance and the social empowerment which is prime. Because unless somebody is accepted socially in whatever activities they are doing, it does not lead. It does not guarantee them the space to speak. Like, for example, I'll give you my own example. When I just did my engineering and came, I was told to my face, because you are a woman, we cannot accept you, by a leading consultancy. But today when I speak, people do listen to me. So this is something, the social linkage, especially in the context of Nepal. As I said earlier, it differs from place to place, but in the context of Nepal, the social acceptance is the biggest element which fosters women's empowerment in any activity that is done.
Just to add a little bit to that, in most countries these legislations are in place already. You have a fair amount of policies, CEDAW and this and that are supposed to empower women. But it is a practice that doesn't happen, and I think this is a gap that is more to do with practice probably than legislation, and making use of the legislations as entry points to justify, to sell the idea. So good practices supported by legislation is, I think, really the root. May, sorry, I can't see you.
I stood up at the end and did this. Yeah, I've been really trying to have my voice up. I feel that we started very well, but at the beginning, at the back here, we were just wondering whether gender meant women. And, so it's wonderful that as we went on, we have clarified that when we are dealing with gender mainstreaming, we are trying to address those roles, the differences in needs, the power relations, which enable females and males to make decisions or not to be able to make decisions. As such, the questions which have been up already are trying to find out whether that's what we mean or we are just trying to target women. So in gender mainstreaming, it's wonderful that the examples have shown when you target those who are undertaking the tasks, those who have the needs for the products we are trying to enable them use, and decision making, then we are making it. So thank you so much for that. Now, we have gone through a lot of information, but I think what we have at the ground from Uganda, so what the Ministry of Energy was asking me when I was coming was the extent to which we have examples of what's the impact out there. How can we have case studies as we prepare for Rio Plus? How can we have examples that we can show when you mainstream gender, this is what you get? So what is that change which we have been able to cause and which is there for us to sustain? So my main request is for us from here to pass on that message that if you're working at the community level, can we have what you are doing? Because you are there where we can't be. And a wonderful example which I would like also to bring up is the fact that we from research, I also work in Makerere University as a lecturer and a researcher. We have a lot of work to do. So from you who are in front of us, how has research enabled you to mainstream gender within the different activities? What is the role of research? And in order for us to make use of the data and information we use, can we deal with partnerships? Partnering with government so that they can make changes in their policies, in our policies, as well as the private sector for us to know what they have done. The role of research is so key. As I end, we have done a lot, you have shown us a lot, but have you planned for sustainability? We've used a lot of donor money, we thank you so much donors, but what is the role of our governments in enabling us to sustain biogas, all those activities which we have done within our off-grid and within the grid? What can we do in order to advocate for and support those partners who can enable us to sustain gender-focused projects? Thank you.
Can you just have a short response?
Maybe I'll just give you from the Kenyan perspective. In terms of partnership with research institutions, we are doing a very big study now, for example. You see, even here we have mentioned several times that we have reduced indoor air pollution. How much of that? 5%? 10%? Because those are the figures we need, hard facts, as she said, so that we can use these facts to convince our policymakers actually. At the moment, this is what is happening, but when a woman uses an improved stoves, this is what can happen. We need those facts. And we partner with universities to do such researches to be able to establish the facts we need to influence the policies. The other thing is, you see, for example, in terms of material for construction of, for example, an improved stove, you need an insulative material which cannot lose the heat, but also a material which is heat resistant. Because cooking, you know, the temperatures there, it's an everyday thing. Now, if you really want this woman to keep using that stove, you need good material for the fire chamber so that she doesn't need to do a lot of repairs. This is an area where we're also involved with some lecturers at the university, including a research institution in Kenya, which is helping us to find out which good material we can use, for example, in the fire chamber for the rocket stove. So such are the things which in Kenya we are partnering with research institutions to get answers. And you see, when we have a good stove, which means more positive impact to the women we are trying to address. Thank you.
Sorry.
My name is Patricia Litho. Sorry, I have a problem with my voice, but I'll try to be a bit clear. Well, I'm glad May talked before me, because what I want to say is sort of related to what she has mentioned. I still feel a sense of where are the men? I know it's always been where are the women, but if we're moving towards gender, we should be asking where are the men? I'm glad the numbers today show that we're actually beginning to include men in gender mainstreaming, which is what it should be. But I think we should remember we are all a product of the same orientation. And focusing on women alone because they've been disadvantaged does not give us a guarantee towards access and control, because men remain isolated and thinking the same way they've always done, while the women get liberated, and then it's a point of conflict because the woman changes, the man hasn't. The woman is thinking differently, the man is thinking the same old way. So I think in focusing on women, the man has to be brought on board, he has to be deconstructed and reconstructed again. That way we have a more meaningful product. Because from all the presentations, like May said, women are making headway, but men are still exactly where they are. And that is why we don't see women at the policy level. Thank you.
Yeah. A man should respond to this.
No, well, okay. Sorry, I don't like microphones. So, I'm technology strategist. Well, Francesco from Asian Development Bank, I thank you very much for all the presentation. Just a very quick remark. I think working in an organization which is really coming up now on understanding the linkage between gender and energy, I really welcome the comments of some of the colleagues. I think we need more data and information on the results of your very, very exceptional, kind of grassroots experience. I was particularly impressed, not that I'm biased living in Manila, but especially by the Philippine presentation, because you really show evidence of how gender relations has changed as a result of a gender intervention. So it's not about only quantitative data, but you also provided some qualitative analysis of how inter-household relationships have changed within very vulnerable population living in the area that we all know by living in Manila. So I think those kind of examples, and I'm looking at SOMA, organizations like the Asian Development Bank and the gender team they're in, we're really looking forward for that information. And it's only through this information that we can inform our sensitive and increasingly sensitive male energy colleagues in really taking gender and social inclusion more seriously. And I think sadly we are still at that stage. So I look forward for more contribution in the policy dialogue later on. But I think I can now but overemphasize the importance of coming up with with sex-aggregated information and data at the impact level. Whether that's a perfect or imperfect result of a lot of investment, less investment, thinking it through at the beginning, I think we don't live in a perfect world at all. And sometimes remedial action, mid-course or end-course, showing any gender-related results, as again, imperfect as it is the only way to convince mostly male energy engineers to really move forward. So I thank you for that. I look forward for any evidence, even if it comes from Africa, not necessarily from Asia. I think we're walking. I'm very impressed really by the Botswana experience in working with the Botswana Power Corporation. We're doing something similar in Bhutan. And I think it's great to see the public organization really taking the gender and social inclusion agenda in their own hands. I think, thank you for a really enlightening presentation.
Thank you. Point is taken. The only small intervention I'd like to make is that I think we all agree the importance of data. At the same time, we also have to admit that this causality thing is oftentimes very difficult to establish, especially in gender mainstreaming. 94% functionality rate in biogas program has gender mainstreaming as one of the many factors. So that is always an issue we have to deal with. However, sex disaggregated data and hard data to the extent possible, absolutely we all need to work towards that. I think we just take two more points and then close the session.
Hello, my name is Monica from ECOWAS Center of Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency. My question is to the presentation on African Biomass Partnership Program. I want to find out, like you said, we understand that it's important that women are involved, but how do we get women to be more involved? My question is, what are the reactions of the husbands of these women? The fact that you're changing them from their role of being a housekeeper to medicine. How are the men receiving this? How are the husbands reacting to this? Are they supporting it? Are they indifferent? Or are they being obstacles to it? Because the roles of women are embedded into the social culture of the people. So just bringing something new without the men being accepting this, might make the success of this project very difficult. So, okay.
Thank you. I think the responses of husbands to these women are varied, and I think some of the women, they can't make it as a biogas mason because of the obstruction they receive from husbands or family. And we actually plan to do at least one of the case studies to actually these female masons, the ones that are successful and the ones that are not, like what is now really influencing, to have more information, because I just get scattered information. I know also, for example, there's one female mason that is very successful and she runs the business with her husband. So that is one example. But I also hear that some of the successful female masons, they're actually single, they're either widowed or whatever. They're not, they just don't have a husband. And then as soon as they get married, then they get into problems, maybe, yeah? So, yeah, that's just one of the challenging factors, actually. It's just the husband or family that have maybe other opinions. So we should really look into ways how we can deal with it, how we can support those ladies.
Okay, that's...
Hello, I'm Manoli DeBrassa. I recently joined ETC's energy team. I think May encapsulated many of my concerns, but I just want to stress one more point, and that's related to funding. It wasn't clear to me from any of the presentations. I kept hearing donor names: GIZ, HEVOS, SNV, WWF. I don't know whether CDM is the Clean Development Mechanism. I understand that a lot of these community-based models and approaches have been for many years sponsored and funded by by external donors. But I do want to stress that one of the things that we have to look forward to now with Energia, and I hope this will be really taken up at the practitioners' follow-up meeting, is how to make these programs sustainable. And that means getting national governments and national entities, including the private sector, somehow involved and taking these different approaches on board. Otherwise, we won't get the long-term sustainability that we're looking for. Thank you.
Yes, I agree. I mean, some of these programs are moving towards sustainability, but I don't really see a situation where you can completely do away with doing away with development assistance in one form or the other. It may be technical assistance, it may not be direct subsidies, it may be something else. But given that also the people that you're dealing with are increasingly the poorer and poorer, the unserved ones, and it's becoming more and more difficult to reach those people and provide these basic energy services to them. So my personal submission is that I don't really see development situation of sustainability without development assistance. So I think we just have to work towards a situation where we use that best, in the best possible manner.
Is that close enough? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to congratulate all the presenters for very enlightening presentations. I'm Lucy, ready from Lesotho. And Edwards, I was very interested in your presentation, more especially because, you know, most of our Basotho households, Basotho women, they depend on collecting biomass. They use biomass, for their household needs, and it's depleting. The women are taking longer and longer time to collect biomass on a daily basis. So I think what I'm really interested in is, the criteria for choosing the countries that you are working on. Yes, if you could just elaborate on the criteria, maybe Lesotho would maybe put its house in order and sort of benefit from this project. We already have, biogas plans for households and for schools, but we need to do this on a larger, basis, I think. So if you could just tell us about the criteria, we are interested in that program. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for the invitation to come to Lesotho. So you're in Botswana because you're not the first one asking me. Just in general, I think when the program was conceived, when it started, we did feasibility studies in a number of countries, and part of the selection criteria was actually is either HIFOS or SNV present there, because we also need to start. But also we looked at technical the technical criteria. Is there enough potential demand, etc. But we are actually, we really would like to increase also the number of countries that we work with, including in Africa. And we're probably going to do it. It also depends on funding. So we also need to get funding. But why not Lesotho? We should. I can't.
All right. On that positive note, I think we'll. This is the time to make applications to ELS. So we close the session. Thanks a lot to all the presenters and.